Quanell, on the evening news this week, you took two positions that I consider to be relatively radical, in that you don't think white America can contribute validly to discussions about police reform merely because of the color of their skin and this myth of this holistic white experience with the police. You also took the position that blacks in America that should form an African American only political party to protect the interests of African Americans. I am horrified by we're seeing this a lot. We're seeing universities create safe spaces where white people aren't allowed to go, and we're seeing just a whole slew of this new segregation that's being advocated through the lens of equity when it's really creating a new system of pulling us apart. I think the reason that we're getting pulled apart is because this is control. This is how you control the masses, by convincing the masses that they must be angry at people for a reason that's immutable. And here it's skin color, just like it's been for centuries, and I think it's a bad idea. I do think that white America, anyone that wants to advocate and discuss and participate in police reform should, because we most certainly need it, right? In the wake of Tyree Nichols, we're looking at these cameras from up on high as opposed to the body-worn cameras of the officers. I'm horrified by the fact that it's not mandatory that uniformed patrol officers at every town, every county, every city in America should be wearing a body-worn cam. And I also think that the idea that somehow we should race segregate political parties is absolutely horrifying. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in greater detail.
Charles, you speak as though when you say pulling us apart, you speak as though we've really been together. America has never truly fully integrated in this nation when it comes to black people. In fact, when you look at the public school system in America, the public school system in America today is more segregated today than what it was during the time of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Look at the numbers. The university systems in America, there were more black men in universities going to white schools, white universities, than what it is now doing integration.
None of this is true.
No,
you're
let me break that. No,
lying
stop. Let me break that down.
teeth.
No, let me break that down. No.
Well, but you're lying. But please go ahead.
Right after Reconstruction, Charles, the attempt was made to get more black people involved in higher learning, college education. So there was a tremendous push in this country to get us in those schools, and we went in those schools in great numbers. But it was during segregation that those numbers began to drop under Brown versus Board of Education was challenging that also. Charles, it is sad to say America has not made great progress as we pretended she has. We're kind of going in a circle. White people, well-intended white people, who mean well. When it comes to police reform, you have never really dealt with the black experience in police officers like we have. And so that would be like asking a German to give ideas and to give constructive, meaningful approaches of how Jews can better recover from the Holocaust that took place in Nazi Germany. Look, man, black people are the ones that are absolutely morally qualified to speak about what those reforms should be. White people can do a better job of listening and thoroughly understanding the experience we have had with white police officers and just the police, period. You also got to remember, Charles, go do your research. The first police departments were established in America for one reason. They were established first to be slave catchers. They were taught to be runaway slaves. So at the very root of the concept and the idea of policing in America came with capturing slaves who were striking and running out for freedom. We are in a bad shape in this nation, Charles. And it's truly because nothing has ever really been done to fix the problem. America has such a terrible pain in this nation, and it takes all of us to fix it, yes. Because Minister Malcolm X said the correct thing when he said, only a fool fights in a burning house. We all live in this house that we call America. We can't set fire to it when it's already on fire. But Charles, we cannot put a Band-Aid on cancer and say, now we'll find the answer. That's what we're doing in this country, Charles.
Okay, so you've told a number of lies, and I'll unpack them, try to go in reverse so people can remember. First off, it's a very popular notion that the first police agencies were set up as slave catchers, right? And that's absolutely not true. The first institutionalized police department in America was in Boston, and it was downstream from the night watch, just to watch out for criminals, right? And of course, there is a horrifying evidence of law enforcement during the times of slavery being used in the South to capture and return slaves, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting.
So there were slave
system.
catchers.
But you said it was the first.
And that was the beginning of them too, in the South.
Okay.
In the South, the
But
beginning
you
of police
didn't say
officers
the South.
were
Actually,
slave
it wasn't the beginning
catchers,
of the
Charles.
South either. It's not true. It's a popular myth.
It's absolutely
and it sounds
true.
good, but
Public,
it's a
go do your research
fabrication.
and you'll see.
Yeah,
Go do your
again,
research and you'll see.
again,
And don't read them lying books written by racist lying white men. Go do your research and you'll see. The same way they used black people, black babies during slavery in Florida. Black babies were used as alligator bait. In Florida, when white men wanted to go fishing, they would use black babies as alligator bait. So and they would use police officers to arrest the fathers if the fathers did something out of line, fighting to protect their children. Right here in the city of Houston, Texas, the biggest riot to ever take place in Houston was Camp Logan, because some black military men tried to defend the dignity of a black female who was being beaten by the Houston Police Department. And they took all of them brothers, 19 of them, and executed them without a fair trial. They killed all those black military men for standing for a black woman who was being beaten by the Houston Police Department. You don't tell me white people have had that experience in America like we have had. So hell no, you cannot give us your ideas about police reform when you've never had our black experience with white police officers.
I get that you yell because you don't want to be confronted on your dishonesty, but I'll try again, right? The origin of policing in America is downstream from the concept of the night watch. There is horrifying examples of law enforcement during the horrifying institution of slavery. Of course there are, but it wasn't the origin. And that's not what you said. You didn't say in the Deep South. You didn't qualify it. You said it's the origin of policing. And policing was designed at one point in America just to look for criminals. It's not something policing does anymore, hardly at all, right? Policing right now is prohibition, which is the war on drugs, and revenue raising, writing tickets, citations, typically against poor people, to serve as a regressive tax. It is a completely broken system, and it's a system that I've spent decades advocating for change in, right? Despite my white color, right? Because it is horribly broken. It doesn't serve its purpose, right? And you can talk about all the horrible atrocities in American history, which most certainly there have been a bunch, right? But instead, what I'd like to talk about is how do we fix America? You talk about universities.
But you can't say that, Charles.
Hold on.
But you can't say that. You have never suffered what we as black people have suffered, and now you want to tell us how we fix America? You cannot tell the victims how they handle their perpetrators when you have never suffered the victimization that we have as a people, Charles. Let us tell you how to fix us. Let us tell you how to fix the evil of this nation, because the biggest and the loudest voices at the table for reform in this country of police should be black voices in the beginning and black voices at the end, because we have suffered the most, people of color. You ain't never lived that, Charles.
I am not the one advocating for exclusion of any voices. That's you. Now, again, you're yelling over me because you don't want to hear the truth. You talked about the university system being more participated in by African American men at the time of Reconstruction. That's an absolute lie. That's not even close to being the truth. Back then, universities were just for wealthy white people. We like this myth of the holistic white experience, but this is how the Western world has moved, right? And this, I know you'll yell over me because you may with some more lies, but the truth is that we do get closer and closer to an integrated society. We live in the most integrated big city in America, and we get closer and closer to really true systemic change, right? But that doesn't benefit you because you make yourself a living through division. So you want more division, whereas I want less. But the truth is, there was a system in the Western world where there was a king and aristocrats, one or two, a handful of people, and a bunch of poor people that serviced their every whim, that tilled the fields and paid taxes, and they were serfs, and they didn't own anything. And then people got tired of it, and they started demanding liberty. So the rich people had to find someone else to oppress. But if they didn't convince the poor white people that the other persons that they were oppressing weren't worthy of their attention and dignity, well, they couldn't get away with it. So for hundreds of years, they were selling the lie that somehow those in Africa were less than those in Europe, which of course we know is an absolute untruth and it's disgusting, right? But it's all by the very, very rich that want to control everybody. Right now, at this moment in America, right? The truth is, people are sick of racism. So we have to build a new division.
Charles,
we have to, instead of I'm
people
talking,
are really not
instead,
sick of racism. How the hell you
you're
gonna
not
say
sick
that?
of racism. That's
How
all
you
you
gonna
do.
say that?
All
You're
you
a
do
white man
is
who has
preach
never suffered
bigotry.
racism.
All you,
You're a white
Okay.
man that has never suffered racism.
First of all, you
How
have
you gonna say
no
what white folks
idea
are sick and tired
what
of?
I suffered.
You ain't
Yeah.
never suffered no damn racism.
Really,
You're a white man, Charles.
You look at bigotry on the micro or the macro.
Stop, brother, stop.
The micro or the macro. And let's talk about
White
criminal
folks ain't
justice.
never suffered no damn racism.
Let's talk about
How you gonna say what
criminal
you're tired
justice.
of?
Let's talk about criminal justice. Right here in the state of Texas, we have something called the Michael Morton Act, which protects criminal defendants and demands that they get discovery when they've been charged with a crime. What is that downstream from? That's downstream from a man in Austin, Texas, who was framed for the murder of his wife and spent decades in prison. Well, Michael Morton, white guy. This suggestion that you love to make that white people have this holistic experience, that we're all upper middle class and wealthy, and we all have a silver
You
spoon
give
in our
us
butt.
one white case, but I can give you tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands
Quanell,
of
right
black
now,
men
we
and
live-
women in the
I am
criminal
not
justice
arguing
system that have been
black
just
people
taken
aren't
advantage
oppressed.
of, have
What
been
I'm
executed.
arguing it is that you're this myth.
How many black men have gone to death row in America for two reasons? Being poor and being black.
I don't disagree.
How many black men have been executed in America because they could not afford adequate and thorough counsel?
I don't disagree.
You cannot compare the damage done to black people in the criminal justice system that's been done to a few white men in the criminal justice system. Yes, there's been some atrocities against a few white people, but there's been atrocities against thousands and tens of thousands of black men and women in the criminal justice system.
don't disagree.
There have been laws set up and designed to continuously oppress black people into the system and to feed America's desire for a private industrial prison complex that is monetizing the incarceration of black people, not white men and white women. These criminal justice laws were put in place for poor people, man. You all ain't suffered that type of damn racism. Charles, stop.
Okay, one, the war on drugs is very disparate, as our criminal justice system. I know you don't think as a white man I should have any voice, but go dig up my thesis from Harvard. It was 3 years ago, where I argued that we should end the war on drugs because it has a disparate impact on the black community. But you don't think I should have an opinion or a voice on it only because of the color of my skin, while you're also screaming about racism. And I don't see how you make that math work. What we should have in America is we should recognize the horrible grievances of the past. We should recognize that lots of people suffer, but the difference is that black people suffer more. But there are other things that there are other problematic statistics, right, that you don't want to talk about, and that racists use to justify their racism, and that criminologists use to discuss the underlying root of crime. And at the end of the day, what we should be talking about is how do we make sure good citizens aren't abused by the police? Well, of course, it's cameras. Cameras protect good people from bad police and good police from bad people. They should be mandatory. We should also talk about what the focuses of the police are. Police shouldn't be revenue agents. When I became the presiding judge for a city, I was horrified to learn how dependent cities are on citation revenue to balance their budget. Instead of having an actual tax on rich people, it's a regressive tax
But who
on
they
poor
writing
people.
those tickets
But you
to?
should, poor people.
To black and brown
I
people.
don't disagree.
To black and brown
If you look
people.
at the Ferguson numbers, they're
So-
horrifying.
so
but
Charles,
you don't
that's
think
why I'm
you
saying
haven't
to you-
studied anything.
Charles,
you
that's
sit
why-
up here
Charles,
and you lie.
Charles, that's
you
why I'm
lie
saying to you.
and say inflammatory stuff.
No
I
white
have actually
man
studied
is
it.
able,
Okay.
a qualified man. Look, if you want to email in your suggestions to the Police Reform Committee, email your suggestions in, Charles. But at the end of the day, man, it is an insult to black people to say that we need a white person to give his or her ideas of how to reform
It
a
is an
system
insult
that has oppressed,
to America
enslaved, and abused
to
black people
suggest
for hundreds
that somebody
of years.
doesn't
I'll be
get to
damned
have an
if we
opinion.
need a white man, a white woman's voice to speak about how we need to reform a system that's been so unjust to black people.
See, that's the thing. You yell over me so I can't talk because that's
Oh,
all
hell
you.
no.
That's all you
You're
got.
not gonna say nothing like that in my presence and get away with it.
The very suggestion that a white person can't have an opinion on something, that's just bigotry. Right?
I said email your opinions, but you should not be the leading voices in
I
reform.
have spent decades articulating a reason, ways to fix policing in America. You have spent decades making a fortune off exploiting black people in America, and that's what you do. And you don't want any. You don't want it fixed because you can't make more money off it if you fix it.
Charles, let me say this.
That's the truth.
Charles, you can't get away with making personal attacks on me.
Hey, it's the truth, Quanell. You've been attacking me because of the color
No,
of my skin for 20 minutes.
I attack your ideas.
No. You attacked me because I'm white.
But let me say this to you,
I'm being honest with you.
I don't give a damn about you attacking me.
Okay.
Let me tell you something. You have put more black men in prison than I could ever do. You have failed more black claims and defendants than I ever could.
You're talking about
so
when I was a
don't
policeman,
pretend like
when I was a policeman for 6.5 years.
As a cop and a lawyer, you have had black men go to prison as a cop and a goddamn lawyer. Don't pretend like you've been a holy saint to black people.
Let's
stop the personal attacks. Stop the personal attacks.
2 decades fighting to end the war on drugs. I've done more pro bono work after the protests in 20. I was the one representing black Americans for free while you were looking to make some money off the thing. Trying to make your money. That's why you want us divided to make your money. I want to fix it.
You mad because you crackers don't pay Quanell X.
I'm a cracker now. I'm a cracker now.
A
there you go.
Fake cracker white boy.
You don't
that you love black people.
Don't want to fix anything.
You put a whole bunch
you
of
don't want
Negroes
to
in
fix
prison.
anything because you profiteer off it. You are telling white people to sit down and shut up when I have dedicated my entire life to how to fix it for all Americans.
Putting black folks in prison.
That's not